Welcome to your lecture on pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, and apostrophes. We've gone over a lot of complicated material in the past few weeks. You should be extremely proud of yourself for hanging in there. This week, we'll focus on numbers and abbreviations. Are you ready to get started? Here we go. We have to be very careful about pronoun agreement and reference when writing. Pronouns can make our writing seem unclear and difficult to understand. Let's begin with the definition of a noun and a pronoun. Noun, words that name persons, places, or things. Examples, dog, cat, Jenny, Paris, home. Pronoun, words that take the place of nouns. Pronouns are shortcuts that keep you from unnecessarily repeating words in writing. Examples, he, she, they, it. When you write sentences, you want to make sure that your pronouns do not confuse your reader. Take a look at this example. Mario brought his calculator to school today. Do you see how the pronoun his makes sense in the sentence above? The pronoun makes sense because we know that he is referring to Mario. The calculator is Mario's, but pronouns aren't always this clear. Take a look at this example. Marianne is at the doctor's office and is mad because they are taking forever. In the example above, the pronoun they makes the sentence confusing because we don't know who they is referring to. After reading the sentence, we might assume that they refers to the staff in the doctor's office. In that case, it would be best to write, Marianne is at the doctor's office and is mad because the office staff is taking forever. Do you see how the sentence became clearer after we changed the pronoun? Your teacher might accuse you of using ambiguous pronouns. If you hear such a critique, know that this misuse of pronouns is what your instructor is referencing. I found that students especially struggle with using the pronoun it ambiguously. Remember when we talked about subject-verb agreement? Well, pronouns also must agree with other words in your sentences. According to your textbook, a pronoun agreement means the pronoun must agree in number with the word or words it replaces. Here's an example. Everyone in the office gave me their money for the cake. Do you see how the pronoun matches the word it replaces? The word everyone is plural, so the pronoun their refers to everyone. Here's how the sentence would look if we used a singular pronoun incorrectly. Everyone in the office gave me her money for the cake. Do you see how this changes the meaning of the sentence? By saying her, it makes it seem as if everyone in the office gave me some woman's money. But who is the woman? We don't know. We've already discussed indefinite pronouns a bit, but let's review them quickly to make sure we have a firm grasp of how to use them. Indefinite pronouns are always singular. Here are a few examples of indefinite pronouns. One words like anyone or someone. Body words like nobody, somebody, anybody. The words each, either, and neither. Let's take a look at the example below to really drive this point home. Everybody enjoys his sandwich. Do you see how the example above sounds strange? The sentence doesn't sound right because the pronoun everybody tells us that we are talking about more than one person. In this case, the pronoun his is incorrect. The sentence above sounds as though everybody is eating some poor man's sandwich, and they enjoy the way it tastes. Instead, the sentence should read, everybody enjoys their sandwiches. Doesn't that sound better? Interesting how a small word change can make all the difference, isn't it? Now let's move on and discuss different types of pronouns. Demonstrative pronouns are pronouns that point to or single out a person or thing. Examples of demonstrative pronouns include this, that, these, those. Your textbook states, generally speaking, this and these refer to things close at hand. That and those refer to things farther away. Take a look at these examples. Can I borrow this pen? Are you going to eat these potato chips? Is that seat taken? Are those kids yours? Possessive pronouns show ownership or possession. Examples of possessive pronouns include mine, yours, hers, its. Here are a couple of examples. That dress is mine. Those cookies are hers. Subject pronouns are subjects of verbs. Examples of subject pronouns include he, we, they. Here's an example. He went to the store to buy me a new blender. In the sentence above, the pronoun he is a subject pronoun because he is the subject of the verb went. Object pronouns function as the object of verbs. Examples of object pronouns include it, you, and him. Let's look at some examples. They decided not to move the box because it was so heavy. In the above example, the pronoun it is an object pronoun because it is referring to the box. We'll wrap up our lecture about pronouns by going over possessive pronouns. Phew, that was a lot of information. Good job. Now let's move on to talk about adjectives and adverbs. Adjectives are one of the most fun parts of writing. You use adjectives all the time in your daily life. In fact, you've maybe even used an adjective or two to describe this lecture. If you ever thought this lecture was boring or exciting, guess what? Those are both adjectives. Adjectives are words that describe nouns or pronouns. Let's begin with an example. The stinky, rude old man would not leave me alone. Do you see how powerful stinky, rude, and old are in the sentence above? We now have a vivid image of the old man. If the sentence read, the old man would not leave me alone, we might think he was a friendly old man just trying to make conversation. Now that we know the man is stinky and rude, we have a clear picture of him, and it's not pretty. Now that you understand adjective basics, let's talk about comparing adjectives. When you're using one-syllable adjectives and some two-syllable adjectives, add an ER when you're comparing two things, and an EST when you're comparing three or more things. For example, the beach was better than the pool. The quesadilla is tastier than the burrito. To compare more than two things, we will add an EST, like this. Salmon are the prettiest fish in the sea. Taqueria Sunshine has the best burritos in town. Sometimes when you're using two-syllable adjectives and adjectives longer than two syllables, you'll need to use the word more when comparing two things, and most when you're comparing more than two things. Here's an example using the three-syllable adjective exciting. I wish the movie were more exciting. That drive was the most exciting thing I've ever done in my life. Do you see how the words more and most are used instead of adding an EST? To learn more about comparing adjectives, please consult your textbook. Now that we've covered adjectives, let's switch gears and learn about adverbs. Adverbs describe verbs, adjectives, and other adverbs. They usually end in ly. Watch out for adverbs, though. They can be easily confused with adjectives. Here are some examples of adverbs. The turtle slowly crawled across the road. Slowly is an adverb because it describes the verb crawled. The neighbors are lovably insane. Lovably is an adverb because it describes the adjective insane. When you're using adverbs, keep these rules in mind. Adverbs are used with verbs. Adjectives are used with nouns. Here are a few examples for you. Lainey gently stroked the fluffy kitten. Lionel drove carefully on the old highway. You should not use adjectives after verbs. If you do, your sentences will not sound right at all. Just take a look at the examples below. Mark drove scary on the way to work. Wolf laughed loud at the joke. Instead, adverbs should be used after verbs. Look at how much better these sentences sound when we replace the incorrect adjectives with adverbs. Mark drove scarily on the way to work. Wolf laughed loudly at the joke. Now it's time to turn our focus to numbers and abbreviations. There are a few basic rules that you should memorize, so let's go over them. Spell out numbers that are no longer than two words. Otherwise, use the numbers themselves. Be consistent when you use a series of numbers. If numbers in a sentence or paragraph require more than two words, then use numbers for the others too. Use numbers to show dates, times, addresses, percentage, and chapters of a book. Now let's look at a few examples. I took 20 marbles out of the drawer. Yesterday, Joanne bought 15 tank tops, 205 pairs of earrings, and 4 pairs of shoes. She is one lucky gal. Please turn to Chapter 19 on page 558 of your textbook. Abbreviations are necessary sometimes and unnecessary other times. When you address an envelope, for example, it is perfectly acceptable to abbreviate the word street by writing ST, or the word boulevard by writing BLVD, and you're expected to abbreviate the state. You wouldn't write New Jersey, you'd write NJ. However, when you're writing formally, you should always spell out the entire words. Take a look at this sample table, very similar to the one provided in your textbook. There are few abbreviations that are acceptable in formal writing. They include Mr., Mrs., Ms., Junior, Senior, Doctor, when used with names. Mr. Rodriguez, Mrs. Rodriguez, Mark Rodriguez, Jr. It is also acceptable to abbreviate the initials in a person's middle name, like this: Pammy L. Beanstalk, Perry J. Worthings. Time references are also abbreviated, like 1 p.m., 2 a.m., 3 p.m. Lastly, you should abbreviate organizations, technical words, and company names that are known by their initials: UN, United Nations; WTO, World Trade Organization; USA, United States of America; GE, General Electric. Let's wrap up today's lecture by learning about the apostrophe. An apostrophe is defined as a punctuation mark generally used in order to 1. Show the omission of one or more letters in a contraction. 2. Show ownership or possession. Let's go over apostrophe use in contractions. A contraction is the combination of two words through omission of one or more letters and use of an apostrophe. Here are a few examples of contractions: won't for will not, shouldn't, should not, wouldn't, would not. Do you see how the apostrophe joins the two words together? We also use apostrophes to show ownership or possession. If something belongs to you, you use an apostrophe to show that, like this: my parents' house, Jane's dog Sam, Abby's pony. You don't always need an apostrophe when your writing indicates ownership. When it comes to possessive pronouns, you do not need to use an apostrophe. Possessive pronouns like his, hers, ours, and theirs show ownership, so you don't need an apostrophe as well. Just take a look at the examples below. Those are his sandals. That money is yours. The examples above do not require apostrophes. In fact, they would look strange with apostrophes. See? Those are his sandals. That money is yours. Similarly, you do not need to use an apostrophe when you're dealing with simple plurals. To make a word plural, meaning that you're talking about more than one, you simply add an S to the end of the word. Take a look at these examples. Theodore played with the chickens, not Theodore played with the chickens. Jose bought donuts at the store, not Jose bought donuts at the store. Review these examples a few times to make sure you're clear about apostrophes.